Hello beautiful people. So today's video is going to be on how to solve or answer law enforcement interview questions, including psychological evaluation interview questions. And so before we get started, I just want you to know, and you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I'm a college professor. I'm not an attorney, so everything I mention on this channel is not law advice. It's just simply stating my experience in law enforcement to help you pass these law enforcement job interviews so that you can get that well-paying career with great benefits, etc. So the first topic we're going to talk about on this video is the difference between a consensual encounter, a detention, and an arrest. And I'm telling you this because I'm teaching you how to resolve law enforcement scenarios, and you have to understand the difference between those three scenarios. Is this a consensual encounter where you basically are driving on patrol and you want to contact someone? In that case, you don't need anything, right? You can pull up to a citizen and ask, hey, can I talk to you for a second? It's their choice whether to stop or keep walking and tell you some profanities. That's up to them. That's the first scenario, right? So you have to understand that your limitations, you're limited on consensual encounters because they can just walk away and not answer any of your questions. Number two is a detention. And so in a detention situation, you need reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion to what? Well, reasonable suspicion that a crime has occurred and that this person that you're about to contact is somehow connected, affiliated with that crime, right? So if you get a call and there's been vandalism and the person is described as wearing all black, and then with a short amount of time later, you find someone wearing all black, maybe with a backpack, and there's been some graffiti with blue paint, and then they got blue paint on their fingers, then you have reasonable suspicion to detain this person in that they're connected with that crime. So, reasonable suspicion, it's a detention, they're now free to leave, and you can detain them until you find out more information as to whether this person is affiliated with a crime or not affiliated with that crime, right? So we detain people sometimes, and then we get information that tells us, hey, this person is not affiliated with that crime. So that's the second scenario. And the third and last scenario is probable cause to arrest. So if you do detain that person because you have reasonable suspicion that they were affiliated with a crime, you now have, maybe after you gather some more facts, evidence that this person is going to be arrested for a certain crime because you have what's called probable cause. So to make the arrest, this is the third scenario, you need probable cause. And so you have to understand those basics in order to answer law enforcement scenario questions. And so when you're in a job interview and they'll give you a scenario, without understanding these basics, a lot of time you're just guessing. Because if they come back and say, why did you detain the person? You're not going to be able to answer, well, I had reasonable suspicion. That's the correct answer. Well, what did you have reasonable suspicion of? Well, I had reasonable suspicion that this person is affiliated with a crime connected that just occurred, right? That I got a call on the radio. This is what happened. This person matched the description. And the reason I detained him is because I have reasonable suspicion to believe this person is affiliated with that crime. And keep listening, because at the end of this video, I'm going to discuss a scenario that one of my subscribers brought to my attention on social media that they wanted me to kind of share with you. Some of you are getting ready to go to the psychological interview, and you will need to understand how to answer that question. So anyway, understand that when you're in these job interviews, they're going to give you these critical thinking scenarios, and the only way to solve them, to give a proper answer, is to basically understand those three scenarios. And so without understanding that, if they come back with follow-up questions, you're not going to be able to answer. On social media, you're constantly seeing how there's these auditors, right? First Amendment auditors that are going and videotaping public buildings, sheriff's department, post offices, etc. And then law enforcement gets there because somebody's irritated that they're inside this public or federal or government building, and they're videotaping. And you have to be really careful if you're working in law enforcement now that you don't fall into this trap of you get there and you're in a hurry to kick them out of there, without having, reasonable suspicion, number one, that they committed a crime, or probable cause that they committed a crime. I don't have to remind you, you probably search this on the social media, that if you do make that arrest without probable cause, your department's going to get sued, you're going to get sued, and you're going to be in the wrong. The city's going to have to settle with this person, and it's an embarrassment to us in law enforcement. And so understand these basic foundations of how to resolve law enforcement scenarios. Okay, before we go to the psychological, and I want to try to keep this video short, let me just remind you that you also have to understand the difference between an infraction, a misdemeanor, and a felony crime, right? An infraction is basically a minor traffic violation that you can give either a warning for, that's called spirit of the law, or you can give a ticket for, that's called letter of the law. So you stop somebody for speeding, guess what? You can just give them a warning. That's being, kind. You're using spirit of the law, right? Please slow down and don't let this happen again. That's using spirit of the law. Letter of the law is when you do give them a ticket. Now, on infractions, you have what's called discretion. Discretion to what? Discretion to give somebody a warning or not give them a warning, give them a citation, notice to appear in court. So you have discretion. Misdemeanor crimes, you have a little bit of discretion, but you got to be careful because in some cases you're mandated to arrest. For example, violation of a court order, such as domestic violence restraining order, is a misdemeanor, but that is an order from the judge that if this person violated it, you're mandated to arrest. Be very careful. Follow your department policy. Follow your state guidelines on this. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is felony. Felonies, you got to be careful how the law is written because you may not have discretion to do anything other than make an arrest. So if the law says you respond to a domestic violence situation, someone has injuries from that incident, with that person that you're in a dating relationship or have a child with or you're currently living with, then you're mandated by law to make that arrest. And there is absolutely no discretion, right? And so that's my points there. One more point is that when you're being dispatched to a case, a call for service, right, an incident, you have to understand that is it a misdemeanor violation, such as trespassing, it's a misdemeanor, or is it a felony? Somebody was shot, they're on the ground, they're dying, that's obviously a felony crime. Or they were hit over the head or they're bleeding, it's an aggravated assault, that's a felony crime. And again, you have to step up to what you're going to do. So now this leads me to what I promised you earlier to discuss, which is what one of my subscribers reached out to me and told me. Number one, when the psychologist asks you a question, for example, do you sit in bed and read the newspaper at nighttime? That's not a trick question. It is whether you do or not. Some people are into the news, other people are not. Don't answer that question according to what you think that person wants you to say, because they just want to see if you can actually answer in an honest, straightforward manner. That's number one. Number two, the call in question here is you're dispatched to a call for service, and upon arrival, a bunch of kids take off running, and you look and there's a body on the ground that appears to be dead, and then there's a kid hanging over the body, right, leaning over the body. And so how do you handle that situation? And so you remember what I told you earlier, is this you think a crime occurred? And the answer is yes. What type of crime? Some type of fight or something that caused that person to go down on the ground. But now you're possibly investigating an aggravated assault, which is a felony. Now you're at the highest level of enforcement, so you got to step up. And so the psychologist may tell you this scenario and ask you how to respond to that. So you're one officer, and you get there, you have a body on the ground, and you have kids running, and you have another kid that's leaning over this body. Now you're going to get it on the radio, and you're going to communicate that to dispatch and to the other officers responding to the scene to tell them what is happening, right? You see a person on the ground, appears to be unconscious, and there's a bunch of kids running. They're wearing mainly red colors or mainly yellow colors or whatever they're wearing, black, and give them a direction of travel to the other officers so they can start searching the area. Now you step out of the car If you believe this person just stabbed the person on the ground, then you have a suspect situation. If they're armed, you may have to pull out your weapon, order them to the ground. But if it's just a kid just kind of sitting there, you now have probable cause, right? Reasonable suspicion to detain for sure, but you have probable cause to arrest if you want to arrest, but hold off on that. I'll tell you why in a minute. Reasonable suspicion to detain. Why? Because you believe this person is connected to the crime that possibly just happened, right? So you have a right to go over there, handcuff that individual, pat him down for weapons, put him in your car, and then check the person on the ground for vitals. Are they conscious, unconscious? Are they breathing, not breathing? Can they talk to you? Are you able to ask them what happened? If they're unconscious, now that you've secured the kid in the back of the car, you now are going to be calling for paramedics. Maybe paramedics are already standing by, the ambulance. So you're going to ask them to come in. You're a police officer. They're paramedics. You want to provide a medical aid and something like that. They're unconscious. You would rather ambulance come in and start working on this unconscious person. Now, you're only detaining the juvenile, so you're going to start asking the juvenile questions. Open-ended questions. What happened? Who did what to who? Where did it happen? When did it happen? How did it happen? Is there a weapon involved? And if so, who has that weapon, right? Does this individual know who has that weapon? Because maybe he knows nothing. He just walked up after the fact. But you're not going to let him go until you get more data, because at this point in time, it's an active investigation, and you're going to try to continue to actively investigate this case. And so every time you get more information from this juvenile, again, you haven't arrested him, so you don't have to read him his rights. He's merely being detained. And so every time you obtain more information, you're going to be putting it out over the radio to other officers who are searching the area for the other juveniles that ran. Remember, people will lie to you. People will exaggerate. People will hold information from you. That's a fact. And so detaining one person, you may think you just solved the crime, but that's not the case. This person may be completely lying to you. So if you find at least one more person, you're able to use their statements against each other to eventually get to the truth of the matter. And so that's my advice on this video. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Share it with other people who may benefit from this information. Maybe they have an upcoming job interview. Maybe they have an upcoming psychological interview or promotional interview, whatever it is. I do care for you guys, and that's why I share this information with you. Keep following me on this channel. Keep learning information. Take great care of yourselves, and until the next video.